Man, let me tell you, this season has been one long roller coaster for anyone queuing up to watch the Eagles' offense. Because every time we think things are finally settling into place, something novo apparis para bagan cartudo, you come into a new year imagining that when you return, praticamente every major weapon from the last campaign, the machine would start humming from day one. You look at that group and think, all right, this is supposed to be smooth, the receivers are back, the running game is stacked, the protection should be steady, and the chemistry should already be built in. But when the ball finally hits the field and the weeks start rolling by, you realize quick that bringing everyone back does not automatically mean that the formula is going to click the same way as before. And honestly, one of the things I kept stressing all offseason, and people swore I was exaggerating, was that losing the offensive play caller was going to hurt. I said it repeatedly, and every time I said it, folks jumped into the comments wondering why I was being so negative or why I was not giving the staff a fair shot. The thing is, when you spend last season complaining about the passing game falling flat and then promote the person who coordinated that passing game into the role of offensive architect, you cannot be surprised when the offense starts looking confused. That move never made sense logically, and now the results are proving the point. But before getting lost entirely in that mess, let's talk about something that actually put a smile on my face. The defense. The defense. Man, they came out like a squad that decided enough was enough. You hold a Detroit team that normally lights up scoreboards to single digits, and suddenly the picture changes. That kind of performance does not just happen by accident. And for people who were not anywhere near Philly during that game, let me tell you, the wind outside was insane. I stepped out in the afternoon and the gusts were wild enough to make your eyes water. Balls were floating, wobbling, and slicing through the air like paper planes, and yeah, that affects quarterbacks on both sides. So before anybody tries to throw Jalen under the bus for missing a couple throws, remember that their quarterback was firing passes into the dirt, sailing others over heads, and relying on short dump-offs that their running back turned into long gains. But despite the chaos in the air, one thing remained solid: that defensive front. It feels crazy thinking back to how the season started, when the biggest conversation was where is the pass rush going to come from. Week after week, everybody sat there wondering whether the young edge guys were going to take that next leap. Nolan was struggling to find his rhythm. Jalen Hunt was not quite showing it, and people were waiting for a spark. But deep down, we kept saying that the interior looked monstrous. Jordan Davis felt like he was waking up, and you could almost sense that a switch was coming. Then the trade deadline arrived, and the whole identity of the defense changed. Jalen Phillips showed up and brought a completely different level of energy. It was like plugging a battery into the front seven. Suddenly the pocket was collapsing faster. Quarterbacks were panicking earlier, and the guys around him elevated their level. You could see Hunt feeding off that energy. Even when Nolan rotated in, he played like he had purpose, and with all that pressure coming off the edges, it opened everything for the big dudes inside. Jalen Carter looked more like his dominant self. Jordan Davis was tipping pass after pass at the line. At one point, it really did feel like Detroit's quarterback was throwing against a basketball team with hands up everywhere. And the thing is, when you create that kind of chaos, opposing quarterbacks start seeing ghosts, dirt balls, rushed throws, happy feet, panic decisions. All of it showed up. And the cold wind slicing through the air mixed with the pressure up front made Detroit look completely out of rhythm. Teams that spend all year inside temperature-controlled domes do not suddenly walk into a cold, windy Philly environment in December and perform the same. And that is exactly why securing that first seed matters so much. You make these dome teams travel into real winter and watch their timing melt away. You think Detroit wants to come back here? You think the Rams want to play in this cold? You think Tampa wants to line up in these freezing winds? Nobody wants that. That is why every single conference win matters, and why staying at the top of the standings is crucial. But with all that said, watching this offense has been the complete opposite of enjoyable. It is frustrating because we all know the talent is there. We know Devonta is elite, and he cannot have a night where 3 passes slip through his hands. We know Dallas is better than dropping easy catches, and A.J. Brown cannot check out on routes just because he is frustrated. You cannot demand the ball, get visibly angry when it does not come your way, and then run routes at half effort. That is not leadership. That is not effort worthy of someone who wants to be the focal point of the attack. And Jalen Even with the wind swirling, cannot miss a wide-open sack when streaking down the field. There are certain throws that you simply cannot afford to leave on the grass. It is a combination of quarterback misfires, skill player mistakes, predictable play calling, and a lack of rhythm. The offensive line, even with guys a bit banged up, has to protect better. It is not all on one player or one position group. It is a full unit problem. And when you line up this many high-priced stars on one side of the ball, and they give you 16 points, 10 points, whatever the case may be, you start questioning the investment strategy. Because when you look at the roster with a business mindset, you start wondering why the team is putting this amount of money into offensive firepower. If the plan is to play conservative football and win games 20-16, if that is the philosophy, then why stack the offense with expensive stars when you're not maximizing them? Why treat your offense like a decorated Christmas tree that everybody admires from a distance, but never actually plugs in at that point? You might as well reallocate the resources and build a monstrous defense that dominates every week. Since that seems to be the identity forming right now, and speaking of the defense again, some of these dudes are about to need serious contracts. Nick Abdeen deserves a payday. Moro Jumo deserves a payday. Jordan Davis is on track to earn one. Jalen Phillips might cost a fortune if he keeps up this level. And even players who are not superstar names stepped up today. Adoree Jackson had a strong game, holding down one of the league's most dangerous receivers to practically nothing. Yeah, he gave up a touchdown. But outside of that one play, he was disciplined and sharp. Makuba showed up again. Reed had chances for a couple picks and could have turned the game into a blowout if he held on. But even without them, the defense was suffocating. The crazy part is Detroit went for it on fourth down half a dozen times because they did not respect the offense's ability to make them pay for failing. They kept giving Philly good field position and dare you to capitalize. And the Eagles still walked away with only 16 points. That is not sustainable. Even if your defense is playing like a championship unit, and that is the part that keeps you up at night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what needs to change. Because you know the team can be explosive, you know they have the weapons, and yet something keeps jamming the gears. And the thing that keeps looping in your head after a game like this is how different the tone would be if the offense simply played to its potential. You picture all that field position gifted on a silver platter, all those short fields, all those moments where Detroit practically begged the Eagles to step on their throats. And instead the offense kept letting them breathe. You cannot keep walking away with field goals after stopping a team 4 or 5 times on fourth down. You cannot keep settling when your defense is handing you golden opportunities over and over again. It almost felt like watching two teams playing different sports. The defense was fighting like it was January, and the offense looked like it was stuck in preseason mode, unsure of timing, unsure of rhythm, unsure of identity. What makes it even more frustrating is how predictable everything has started to look. Defenses are jumping routes before the ball even leaves the quarterback's hand. They know when AJ is running a slant, they know when the deep shots are coming, and they know exactly where the tight end is going to break. When spectators sitting at home can recognize a play before it unfolds, imagine what trained defensive backs and coordinators are seeing. It feels like the playbook has been reduced to a handful of ideas that get recycled every drive, and the creativity that once made this offense dangerous has evaporated. You watch these drives stall out not because the team lacks talent, but because everyone knows what is coming next, and that brings you back to the coaching decisions, the structure, the strategy behind every snap. When you promote someone who struggled in a smaller role and hand them the keys to the entire offense, you are gambling your season on hope instead of logic. Nobody is asking for perfection or for 70 points a week, but when you have this much talent, when you have receivers who can outjump, outrun, and outmuscle almost anyone, when you have a quarterback who can extend plays and punish defenses with his legs, there is no excuse for running an offense that looks this flat. It is almost like watching a sports car trying to race with the parking brake halfway up. And while all of this is happening, the defense continues to show why they are the heartbeat of this team. Every week they take the field and set the tone. And every week they remind you that they can drag this team across the finish line. No matter how ugly the offensive performance becomes, the energy they bring, the confidence they play with, the way they swarm to the ball, it all feels like the foundation of something that could be special. Even the young guys, the ones who were still trying to find their place earlier in the season, now look comfortable and aggressive. You can see the communication improving, the tackling sharpening, and the pressure becoming more consistent. And when you talk about guys who elevate the entire unit just by being on the field, Jalen Phillips is at the top of that list. His impact goes beyond sacks and pressures. He changes how the offense looks at the line of scrimmage. He forces tighter pockets, quicker decisions, and less comfortable throws. You can feel the ripple effect on every snap. You watch Jordan Davis batting passes and collapsing the middle. You see Jalen Carter exploding through gaps now that he is not eating double teams on every play. You see Hunt waking up and finding confidence. You watch the secondary take advantage of all the chaos and tighten up coverage. It feels like a defense that is slowly shaping into something opponents will dread facing in January. That is why the thought of wasting these performances keeps nagging at you. When the defense plays at this level, the offense should reward them with breathing room. Instead, every game becomes a grind, every quarter becomes a battle, and every lead feels way smaller than it should. You cannot keep winning 16-9 forever. At some point, the offense has to carry its share of the weight. At some point, the coaching staff has to look at the roster and say, enough playing scared. Enough calling plays like you are trying not to lose instead of trying to win, because fans can handle mistakes. But what drives people crazy is watching the same problems repeat themselves week after week. Watching passes fall incomplete because timing is off. Watching receivers run predictable routes. Watching the quarterback hesitate in moments where he used to trust his instincts. Watching the play caller freeze instead of adjusting. Watching drives stall when they should build momentum. All of that forms a pattern, and patterns do not go away unless someone forces change. But even with all that frustration swirling, you cannot ignore the bright spots. You cannot overlook how disciplined the secondary looked today. You cannot overlook how physical the linebackers were. You cannot overlook how relentless the front four played. You cannot overlook how well they tackled in space, how they swarmed the ball, how they made every yard a chore. You see flashes from Makuba, confidence building in Reed even with the missed interceptions, and growth across the board. You saw a unit that understood the stakes, responded to the moment, and refused to let Detroit breathe. And as for the offense, you keep waiting for that breakthrough moment where everything sinks again. You keep waiting for that drive where the ball moves smoothly, the tempo clicks, and the creativity returns. You know the talent is not the issue. You know the potential is still inside that locker room. But potential does not win games, execution does. And until that shifts, every win is going to feel like pulling teeth. Every matchup is going to feel like a survival test. And every fan is going to walk away with the same exhausted look, wondering why this group cannot tap into what it is clearly capable of. FlyEaglesFly News family, smash subscribe and hit like. Your support keeps the freshest Philadelphia Eagles updates flying in. Drop your take in the comments and let's talk birds. AIDAN Hutchinson has set the league buzzing once again, this time with a post-game remark that is echoing through locker rooms, front offices, and every corner of the sports world, moments after stepping off the field against the Eagles. The star edge rusher dropped a line that many are already calling the spark for one of the NFL's next great storylines. Though brief, his comment carried a tone that felt less like analysis and more like a deliberate provocation and invitation, perhaps, to a new rivalry or a renewed debate about who truly owns the trenches in today's NFL. Sources close to this situation insist Hutchinson didn't raise his voice or adopt an aggressive posture, but the meaning behind his words was unmistakable. Observers say he spoke with the confidence of someone who believes he has crossed a threshold, that he has shifted from young talent to tone setter. And while no one is quoting him verbatim, teams are being remarkably tight-lipped. Every insider seems to agree that Hutchinson's comment hinted at more than just competitive fire. Some believe he was sending a message to the Eagles' offensive line. Others think the statement was aimed at the league at large, a declaration that he is ready to anchor a defensive resurgence. The reaction around the NFL has been immediate. Players across social media are chiming in, some amused, others intrigued, a few even slightly irritated. Theories are multiplying. Did Hutchinson call out a specific player? Was he challenging the entire conference? Or was it simply the heat of competition escaping in an unguarded moment? Even coaches, usually diplomatic in these situations, have been offering carefully measured responses that only add to the mystery. What's undeniable is that Hutchinson has positioned himself at the center of a swirling maelstrom of speculation. Whether his words were intentional fuel or spontaneous passion, they have become the talk of the league. Fans are dissecting every syllable, Analysts are crafting interpretations, and rivals are surely taking note, whatever was said. It has transformed an ordinary post-game moment into a league-wide whisper. A growing murmur that AIDAN Hutchinson might just be preparing to shake up the NFL in ways no one saw coming. That's a wrap from FlyEaglesFly News. If you want the fastest Eagles updates, subscribe, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Sound off in the comments. Let's talk birds.